They say some villages in the north still follow the old ways. Not the ones in travel brochures, I mean the forgotten ones. The ones tucked behind forests too thick for sunlight, with roads so narrow your tires feel like they're being swallowed. I wouldn't have believed that until last October, when I found the village of Elmridge and learned that they don't bury their dead. I was 2 months into a project with the state archives, digitizing old death certificates, property deeds, and birth records from rural counties in northern England. Most of it was boring scans, date stamps, names with faded ink. But one record caught my attention: a death certificate with no burial location, no graveyard listed, no cremation records. Just disposition, returned to soil by ancestral right. Dated March 1983, signed by someone claiming to be a clan elder. I showed it to my supervisor. She laughed it off, said these villages often had their own weird paperwork and to keep scanning. But that phrase, returned to soil by ancestral right, stuck with me. Out of curiosity, I searched the name of the deceased Margaret Wren, age 79. Nothing. No obituary. No census record. But her address was listed. Elmridge, North Yorkshire, a place I couldn't find on Google Maps, not even on Ordnance Survey maps. But it was in the county registry, just not updated since 1991. I found a partial postal code and one road leading toward the moors. So on my next weekend off, I rented a car. I drove north from Leeds through increasingly narrow roads, the kind with moss growing in the middle. The sky was gray and fog kept sweeping down the hills like waves. My phone signal dropped an hour in. Around noon, I passed a rusted metal sign half swallowed by weeds. The paint was chipped, but readable. Elmridge, let the roots remember. I thought it was some local poetic motto. I didn't realize it was a warning. Elmridge wasn't on any map because it wasn't really a village anymore. Just a dozen old stone cottages scattered in a wooded hollow surrounded by twisted oak trees. Everything felt still. Not empty, just waiting. As I stepped out of the car, I noticed something strange right away. There were no birds, no dogs barking, no sound except the creak of branches. And every house, every single one, had bundles of dried herbs hanging above the doors. Some were blackened like they'd been burned. It wasn't decoration. It felt like protection. I walked the path until I found a sign nailed to a wooden post. Visitors leave before sundown, the woods do not return what they take. I almost turned back right then. But I told myself it was just rural superstition. I was wrong. The first person I met was an old man chopping wood in front of a sagging cottage. He wore a thick wool coat and looked at me without stopping. I introduced myself, said I was doing research. He didn't answer, just stared. Then he said, "The dead here are not yours to count." Before I could ask what that meant, he turned and went inside. I should have left. I should have taken the road back and never looked in the rear view. But I kept going. Near the center of the village was a small chapel made of stone so old it looked melted by time. There was no cross, no stained glass, just carvings, circles within circles, spirals, roots twisting around figures with hollow eyes. I stepped inside. It smelled like damp earth and ash. There were no pews, only wooden stools arranged around a fire pit in the floor. The ashes were fresh. Beside the pit was a wooden altar. On it, dozens of bone fragments laid in patterns. Not buried, not even hidden, displayed. I heard footsteps behind me and turned. A woman in a gray shawl stood in the doorway. She said calmly, "They don't like strangers near the remembering place." I apologized, started to leave, but she held up a hand. "Wait, you came looking for the Wren name, didn't you?" I froze. "How do you know that?" I asked. She didn't answer directly. Margaret Wren was my aunt. She returned to the soil in '83, same as the rest. I asked her what that meant, return to the soil. She stared at the ashes. In Elmridge, the dead don't rest underground. We keep them warm, we keep them close. We feed the roots, and the roots remember. It's only the outsiders who bury and forget and wonder why the dead come back. I thanked her and stepped outside. The sky had darkened, clouds turning slate gray. It was barely 3 p.m., but it already felt like dusk. As I walked back toward the car, I noticed something new. On the hillside behind the chapel was a tree, twisted, gigantic. Its bark was black and gnarled like veins under skin, and at the base were faces, hundreds of them carved into the wood, no, not carved, grown. Half-formed mouths and empty eye sockets bulged from the trunk, some small, some full-sized, like human skulls fossilized into bark. And I swear one of them blinked. I stepped back, heart hammering, tree watching me, or maybe wind playing tricks. I blinked again, the face was gone, just bark, but the chill in my spine wouldn't leave. I turned toward my car, But the path looked different somehow, longer, darker. The cottages seemed further apart. The woman from the chapel was standing at the edge of the path, hands clasped in front of her like she'd been waiting. She said, "If you saw the root face, it means they remember you now." She told me I should leave before sunset or stay forever. Then she walked away, shawl fluttering like a shadow. I got in the car, started the engine, but it sputtered, stalled again, tried again, nothing. I stepped out and checked the hood, wires gnawed like by rats or something bigger. No choice but to wait or walk. I decided to go back to the chapel, maybe find answers, maybe shelter. As I walked, I noticed every cottage had smoke rising now, chimney fires lit, not one person in sight. But voices drifted, wind carrying whispers, some low, some humming. The chapel door was open now, fire burning in the pit, the bones on the altar rearranged in a spiral pattern. Sitting around the pit were the villagers, all of them heads bowed, hands folded in laps. The woman in gray looked up. She said, "Tonight is the night of long memory, the time when the soil speaks back." Before I could reply, she gestured to the fire. "Sit or stand, but do not speak when it begins." I sat, not out of obedience, but fear. The air buzzed like bees inside my skull. Then one of them began humming, deep, low, mournful. Others joined, hands swaying side to side. The fire grew higher, but gave off no heat. Smoke curled like fingers reaching toward the ceiling, then downward toward the floor. The smoke touched the bones on the altar, and they moved, not rolled, moved like crawling. I stared as one small piece, shaped like a jaw, clacked open and shut silently. One of the villagers began to speak, voice, not his own, higher, female voice. She said, "I was Margaret Wren. I am not gone. I am not buried." My skin crawled. The woman in gray turned to me. "You brought her name." She woke with it. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She didn't smile, didn't blink. "Only what is owed remembrance, return root." I ran. Out of the chapel into the woods, trees thicker than before, branches like arms tearing at my clothes. I turned back once, chapel lights glowing red through the trees and faces in the bark watching. I don't know how long I ran, hours maybe, or minutes, forest looping, turning, leading me back again and again to the same tree, the root face. This time its mouth was open wide enough to step into. I didn't, but I heard my name from inside, my own voice echoing out. I fell to my knees, screamed, nothing came out. Then light behind me, torchlight, villagers walking silent, forming a circle around me. The woman in gray approached, held something in her hands, old worn death certificate, mine. She whispered, "Return to soil by ancestral right." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move, ground soft, mud like pulling, sucking. I looked down, roots twisting around my ankles, up my calves, cold as bone, tight as rope. She said, "The roots remember you now, they won't forget." Last thing I saw before the dark swallowed me was the face in the tree, smiling, not in cruelty, but in welcome. I woke up, or maybe not woke, just opened eyes, darkness, thick, damp weight on chest, smell of moss and old earth. I was underground, but breathing somehow, air, stale roots brushing my cheeks like fingers. I pushed, tried to move, couldn't, arms pinned, legs numb, cold wrapping around me like I was being cradled by the soil itself. Then voices above, muffled, but growing clearer. Chanting, not words, just syllables, pulsing rhythmic like a heartbeat from the dirt, then light. A crack opening above, flickering torchlight, pouring in, outlining faces, staring down through the earth, like looking into a grave from above. It was the villagers again, faces blank, chanting, growing louder. The woman in gray, holding something in her hand, dangling it into the hole. It was my wallet, my ID. She let it fall, landed beside my head. She said, "Your name is remembered now, your place is marked, you must finish what was begun." I screamed again, or thought I did. No sound, only the hum of the soil. I felt it then. Movement beneath me. Not animals, not bugs, but bones. Tiny bones, fingers wrapping around my back, lifting. The earth pushed me upward, not crawling, more like rising, lifted by unseen arms until I was out of the ground. I collapsed on grass, wet, cold night wind slapping my face. Behind me the chapel doors were open wide, fire, still burning, bones, still crawling. This time the villagers stood in two lines, path leading between them toward the chapel. I was shaking, drenched in sweat, or maybe dew, but walked between them, pulled not by force, but memory, like a dream. I didn't choose to enter, but feet moved on their own. Inside now, altar bare, fire gone out, bones gone, just ash and silence. She was their woman in gray, but younger, now no gray in her hair. Dress no longer tattered, face soft, smooth. She said, "You returned as promised, the debt now can be buried." I asked, "What debt? What did I owe?" She touched my chest. Your blood, your name, you're forgetting, you're leaving. We don't bury the lost, we wait until they return. I felt it then inside, heart slow, steady, but not my rhythm, something older, deeper. She held out her hand, small seed, black, hard, glistening like wet stone. She placed it in my palm, closed my fingers around it. She said, plant it where you remember the most. I woke up again, this time on the side of the highway, car parked beside me, door open, engine off, like nothing happened, birds chirping, morning sun rising. In my fist, the seeds still there behind me in the woods, no village, no chapel, no faces in bark. But when I drove away, mirrors showed something not behind me, beside me in the back seat, the woman, not gray, not young, just face, eyes closed, lips moving silently, as if still humming. Then gone, I didn't look back, not once. Weeks later at my childhood home, empty now after my parents passed, I dug a small hole in the backyard, placed the seed, covered it with dirt, no ceremony, just instinct. Nothing grew until the first thunderstorm. Then overnight, a tree twisted, black bark roots spread wide like grasping fingers, and at the base small faces, not carved, not shaped, just formed in the grain of the wood, mouths, open eyes watching. I moved again, changed my name, burned every document. But sometimes I hear them in dreams, humming, calling, reminding me I am never lost, only waiting to be remembered, and the roots they never forget. I woke in the dark, cold soil pressing in like hands around my chest, my mouth filled with dirt, but I could breathe somehow, air thin and bitter like burnt wood. I opened my eyes, couldn't see, only feel damp roots wrapped around my arms, my legs pulsing like veins alive. I wasn't buried, I was held still, held close like something being kept. I tried to scream, but the earth swallowed the sound like it knew how. Then a voice, not outside, but inside my skull, soft like a mother's whisper. Now you understand why we don't bury the dead, we root them. Memories not mine flooded in faces. I'd never seen children running through these woods, voices singing in old tongues, funerals with no coffins, just open mouths in the earth. 1,000 lifetimes blooming like rot through my brain. I saw her again, the woman in gray, standing above me, lightless eyes, hands red with soil, her mouth opened, and I heard my own voice spill from it. You came back, we knew you would, the roots called you, the blood answered. I was shaking, not from fear, from something else, something rising from beneath my skin, like heat, like hunger. The roots tightened, pulsed like they were tasting me, then loosened slowly, gently. I sat up, gasping, coughing, dirt and memory around me. The woods were quiet, too quiet, even for night. The trees bent inward, their branches hanging like mourning veils. The path wasn't there anymore, only a clearing, and in the center a circle of stones, moss-covered, carved with symbols. I stood, stepped into the circle, and the ground shivered beneath me like it recognized my weight. Then they came. Not walking, not crawling, but rising from the ground like steam, villagers, old, young, half-formed faces flickering in and out like bad dreams. They surrounded me, not touching, just watching, heads tilted, eyes wide and hollow. Then together they said, the debt was never paid, the name was never buried. One stepped forward, a boy, eyes black as pitch, holding something in his small hands, my old house keys, rusted, bent, covered in blood. I whispered, I don't belong here. The villagers replied, as one voice, one breath. You never left. I turned to run, but the woods had closed, the trees touching each other, bark fused into a wall of living wood. The sky above split open, not with light, but with shadow pouring like ink, drowning the stars. And from the ground came a sound, deep, low, like a drumbeat from the heart of the world. The earth opened again, not under me this time, beside me, a pit, roots hanging like ribs inside it, the chapel twisted, broken, burning upside down, and floating above the pit was her, the woman in gray, arms out, eyes glowing like coals. Remember what you promised before you were born. I shook my head, but tears ran down my face, because somewhere deep I did remember. She said, your name is our anchor, your blood our return. She raised her hand, and the villagers began to hum again, that low, painful sound of memory and grief. I fell to my knees again, the ground beneath me warm, pulsing, matching my heartbeat. Then everything went still, completely still. Then the roots moved. The roots moved like fingers dragging across my skin, not harming, but searching. They wrapped around my wrists, my neck, my spine, like they were learning me, memorizing every piece. The villagers stepped closer, humming louder, their mouths open too wide, their eyes not blinking, the ground beneath them pulsing in rhythm with the hum. The woman in gray spoke again, but this time her voice was many voices, children, women, old men, all layered over each other. We remember, now we remember, all of you. I screamed, not out of pain, but because the memories weren't just theirs anymore. They were mine, pouring and drowning me, faces, places, names I never knew, but now loved and lost. Then the boy stepped forward again, still holding the keys now. They were glowing red hot. He handed them to me. But they didn't burn, they sank into my palm, melted into my skin like ink. The villagers said, "You hold the key to open the last door." I looked down, my veins black and pulsing like roots. The earth beneath my feet split. Again, wide and deep and endless. Inside it, I saw myself standing alone in my childhood bedroom, staring at a mirror that wasn't there before. And in that mirror, I saw the village, this village before it decayed, vibrant, full of life, of ritual, of blood. I saw myself again, this time a child among them, laughing, playing, dancing around a fire. I had been here before, not as a visitor, but as one of them. The woman in gray said, "You are the last of the bloodline. You are the return. The cycle must close." The ground rose up around me, forming walls, bark, stone, flesh, all together. I was inside a cocoon, breathing soil, hearing the hum still rising louder, louder, until it became one long scream, not of fear, but of release, then silence, sudden, total. And I opened my eyes to morning, bright sky, birds singing, breeze soft across my face. I stood alone in the field, no chapel, no villagers, just wildflowers, and dew. My hands still black veined, the roots still etched in my skin. I walked back to my car, engine started. Without hesitation, I drove away, heart still pounding, but somehow calm. In the rearview mirror, the trees watched, but didn't follow. As the village disappeared behind the hills, I felt it, not gone, not buried, just waiting. And in my chest something bloomed, not a heartbeat, but a pulse, older, deeper, like the earth itself had claimed me. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was watching, waiting. Something held its breath, just like me. Days passed, or maybe they didn't. Time felt soft, bendable. Dreams bled into waking. Every tree looked familiar, every shadow whispered. At night, the soil outside my window shifted ever so slightly, like something restless beneath the ground, turning, reaching, stretching its limbs. I tried to return to normal life, work, calls, friends, noise, but it all felt paper thin. Voices, distant, eyes unfocused. I couldn't forget the hum, it lived under my skin now. Then one night, I woke to the sound of my own voice whispering from the hallway. Soft, low, steady. I followed it, heart pounding, hands shaking. There in the dark was the boy, the one from the chapel, holding a candle, the flame green and flickering without smoke. He said nothing, just turned and walked away, down the stairs, out the door, into the woods that weren't there yesterday. I followed. The world bent, trees opening to let us pass, sky bruised with strange stars, stars that pulsed like eyes. The deeper we went, the more I remembered, not just sights, but smells, voices, songs, lullabies in a language I never learned but knew. Finally, we reached a clearing. In the center, a pit wide, and breathing around it stood the villagers, their faces calm, blank, ancient. Above them, the chapel floated, not built, but grown, vines pulsing, glowing, bone and bark fused into sacred shape. The woman in gray was there, waiting, her eyes like fog, her hands outstretched. She whispered, "You crossed the threshold once, now you must return with roots." They formed a circle around me. The hum rose again, deeper than before, vibrating my bones, my thoughts, my name. The pit opened wider, and I saw down into it, my past lives, my bloodline, every ancestor walking in a spiral pattern, down, down, down. I saw the first burial, the first refusal, the pact made in silence with soil and breath and memory. I was one of them. I always had been. I knelt without meaning to, my hands touched the earth, and it felt like skin, warm, pulsing, welcoming. She said, "You are the vessel, now the memory must live in flesh." The villagers stepped forward, each pressing their hands to my chest, my back, my head. Their memories spilled into me, songs of winter births, of pain, harvests, of blood, rituals under moons I didn't recognize. The boy pressed his candle into my heart. It sank in, without flame, but burned like truth. And the roots rose again, not to drag me, but to crown me, curling around my head like a wreath of history and hunger. I didn't scream this time, I breathed in. And the hum became a heartbeat, mine, ours. The soil accepted me, not as a visitor, but as a voice. I woke up lying in the roots, damp earth against my skin, night sky above, but wrong sky, full of stars that didn't belong, constellations, unfamiliar shapes like bones scattered across black velvet. The villagers were gone, but their whispers lingered, trees still swayed though there was no wind, and the chapel bell rang by itself, slow, steady, each chime a heartbeat. I stood, tried to walk, roots let go, but not fully. They stayed wrapped around my ankles like leashes, gentle yet firm. I followed the sound of the bell toward the chapel, But it wasn't the same. Now twisted, taller windows glowing from inside with pulsing red light, like veins under skin. When I stepped inside, everything was reversed: pews on the ceiling, bones on the walls, fire in the floor. The woman in gray stood upside down above me, her hair hanging like tendrils, her eyes all pupil black, endless. She said, "You are remembering now, not just this place, but the first place, the place before names." She reached out, hand upside down, finger brushing my forehead, and suddenly I was not me. I was every version of me that had walked this village, every ancestor, every forgotten name, every person buried in soil that was never meant to hold the dead. I saw through their eyes, felt their last breaths, choked in roots, drowned in mud, burned in chapel fire. I was a child lost in the woods, a midwife accused of hexcraft, a soldier returned to find no one remembered him, a girl who danced with shadows until they swallowed her. And then I was myself again, but more hollow, stretched thin like a thread between centuries. The woman said, "You must take root or the soil will starve. Memory feeds the land, blood feeds memory." I backed away, but the chapel pulsed around me, its walls breathing, its bones humming, each note a name. Behind me the villagers returned, walking through the walls, silent eyes all white, carrying tools, not weapons, shovels, knives, embroidery, needles, things passed through generations. They surrounded me again, but this time they didn't speak. They knelt one by one and began digging with their bare hands. The floor was soft, now crumbling, revealing a pit beneath blacker than shadow. And something moved inside, slow, coiling like roots or limbs or both. The woman in gray said, "To bury is to forget, to root is to remember, choose now." I didn't want to choose, but the earth was cracking beneath my feet and my own hands moved without asking, fingers digging, pulling soil to my chest like it was calling me home. Then a voice broke through, loud, sharp, real, not from them, not from the village, my own voice, but distant, crying from the trees, calling my name over and over, echoing. I looked up and saw a boy standing at the edge of the woods, me younger, maybe 8, maybe 10, barefoot, bleeding from the palms, eyes wide with fear and recognition. He said, "Don't become it, please. You promised you wouldn't forget me." The villagers turned toward him, heads tilted like dogs, hearing something they didn't understand. The woman hissed, "He is a crack in the memory. He must be buried." I ran past them through the chapel wall into the woods. The boy ran too. We collided, breathless. He grabbed my wrist, warm, solid, and everything shook. Trees screamed, leaves turned to ash, ground buckled behind us, chapel collapsing into itself. Like paper in flame, we ran until the trees thinned, until sky turned right again, stars returned to shapes I knew. We stopped at the edge of a field, dawn creeping over the horizon, light burning away the nightmare. Inch by inch the boy looked at me, said, "They buried me without a name, you gave it back." And just like that he vanished into mist, but I remembered now his name, my name, our name. Back in the village nothing remained, no cottages, no chapel, just roots twisted into the shape of houses, and a single tree in the middle of the field, its bark carved with faces. One of them was mine. I never went back, but sometimes at night I hear the bell from the chapel that no longer stands, and the wind whispers the names of those who never got to leave. And when I sleep, the roots still wrap around my dreams, reminding me that memory is not just something we carry. Sometimes it carries us.